Good afternoon, students. My name is Gautam Sharma. I am a senior zoology faculty at Sri Chaitanya Educational Institutions. Today, I will be taking you through a brief overview of the chapter Human Health and Diseases. It's a very important chapter from class 12th for NEET exam. As we can see, the number of questions from this chapter, every year we are getting around 3 to 5 questions from this chapter. 5 in fact has been the recent average. As we see in 2024 as well as 25, there have been 5 questions chapter. In 2023 there were 3 questions, so that means it's a very important chapter. Around 20 marks to 25 marks also from this chapter you can get easily if you are well conversant with all the concepts in this chapter. Now if we take a brief overview of this chapter in the form of this flowchart, the immune system can be divided into various portions. First of all, if we talk about human diseases, the diseases are of 2 types: infectious and non-infectious diseases. Diseases caused by pathogens like bacteria, viruses, protozoa, helminths, they are called infectious diseases because they can easily spread from one person to another. And the non-infectious diseases include genetic diseases, diseases caused by stress or lifestyle or carcinogens. For example, cancer also is a non-infectious disease. Control measures for the diseases: for stress related diseases, exercises; for infectious diseases which are caused by pathogens, we can follow control methods like taking clean food and water; personal hygiene, observing personal hygiene, keeping the body clean, taking a balanced diet; and of course a very important thing, taking vaccines also. Now, immune system, if we talk about the body's defense mechanism against the diseases, that itself consists of 2 parts: innate immunity, which is also called non-specific, and acquired immunity, also called specific immunity. Under innate immunity, the barriers that we get are physical, physiological, cellular, and cytokine barriers. Physical barrier includes skin and mucous membranes. Physiological barriers includes the secretions on the physical barriers like HCl in the stomach, for example. Cellular barriers includes macrophages, neutrophils, and other WBCs in the body, while cytokine barriers includes internal antimicrobial proteins like interferons, which are produced by virus infected cells to protect other cells from further viral infection. Acquired immunity, on the other hand, consists of immunity provided by 2 types of lymphocytes: B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Immunity provided by B lymphocytes is called HMI, humoral mediated immunity, or also called AMI, antibody mediated immunity. Why? Because antibodies are protein molecules produced by B lymphocytes which travel through blood, which is humor or liquid. So since antibodies travel via blood, the immunity provided by B cells is AMI, antibody mediated, or HMI, humoral mediated. Immunity provided by T cells, on the other hand, is called CMI, cell mediated immunity, as T cells will be directly acting against the infected cells as well as the pathogens present in the body, producing toxic proteins, killing them directly. The immunity which is of acquired type divided into 2 parts, HMI and CMI. CMI, as we discussed, can be further divided into passive and active types of immunity. If I am producing antibodies in my own body because of entry of a pathogen naturally in my body or artificial entry of pathogen in the form of vaccines, the antibody production is done by the body of the host itself in both cases. That is what is called active immunity. On the other hand, if we take ready-made antibodies from somewhere, that would be called passive immunity. Immune system disorders are further of 2 types: allergies and autoimmunity. Allergy is hypersensitivity reaction of the body, while autoimmunity is the immune system of the body turning against self. Normally, immune system is supposed to protect us against foreign pathogens. However, if the immune system cells fail to distinguish between self versus non-self, if they start identifying your own body cells as abnormal or foreign, we can call that as autoimmunity. Another important part in immune system is studying the lymphoid organs. There are 2 types of lymphoid organs in the body: primary lymphoid organs and secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs include bone marrow and thymus. Bone marrow is the site of production of all WBCs or all lymphocytes of the body, and is also the site of maturation of cells called the B-lymphocytes, which are responsible for HMI, humoral mediated immunity. On the other hand, the T cells, which are responsible for providing us the CMI, cell mediated immunity, they are also produced in the bone marrow, but they come out of bone marrow in immature form and go to thymus gland, which we have studied in endocrine system also. So they go to the thymus gland and undergo structural and functional maturation over there. So since their site of maturation is in the thymus gland, they are called T lymphocytes. So thymus, however, is also called a primary lymphoid organ. So definition of primary lymphoid organs can be what? Any organ that produces the lymphocytes or acts as a site of maturation of the lymphocytes. Bone marrow produces the lymphocytes and is also the site of maturation of B cells. Thymus doesn't produce any lymphocytes but is the site of maturation of the T lymphocytes. So organs which are sites of production or maturation of lymphocytes are called primary lymphoid organs. On the other hand, once these cells, the B cells and T cells, have become mature in their respective locations, bone marrow and thymus, they do not stay over there after maturation. They move or migrate out of the sites of their maturation to get deployed or stored at various strategic locations all over the body. For example, they get stored in the tonsils, they get stored in the lymph nodes in your armpits, they get stored in the spleen, they get stored in the lymph nodes around your genitals. So these are various places where, and of course one more important location that I forgot to mention, they also get stored all over the wall of your small intestine as Peyer's patches or MALT, mucosal associated lymphoid tissue. So these locations where mature lymphocytes are stored are called secondary lymphoid organs. Now you can always think that if primary lymphoid organs are there, why do we need secondary lymphoid organs? Well, primary lymphoid organs are sites of production or maturation of the lymphocytes. Secondary lymphoid organs are the sites of their storage. Along with storage, secondary lymphoid organs are also the sites of interaction between the mature lymphocytes and the pathogens. So whenever pathogens enter your body, lymphocytes stored at various places along all over your body will be interacting against the pathogens in these secondary lymphoid organs only. The next part about the immune system, discussing various challenges in it. The challenges of course include discussion of two diseases, AIDS and cancer. AIDS caused by HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. The detection test for AIDS is ELISA. Cancer, uncontrolled multiplication or mitosis of cells, which can be of two types. If the cells that have started growing in an uncontrolled fashion or have started dividing in an uncontrolled fashion remain restricted at their location, that type of tumor or cancer is called a benign tumor. On the other hand, if the cancer cells break off, the tumor cells break off from the site of benign tumor and start migrating into the other places in the body, this property of migration is called metastasis, and such cancers that have started to show metastasis are called malignant tumors. Another point which is important from the questions perspective from this chapter is drug and alcohol abuse. As we will see later on in the same presentation, there are a lot of questions asked from drug and alcohol abuse frequently in NEET exam. So first of all, abuse, what does that mean? Indiscriminate or unrequired use. If I'm using something that my body doesn't require, if I'm sick and the doctor has prescribed some medicine that I'm eating because I need them, I need to get treated, which is why I need those medicines. But if I'm consuming alcohol, if I'm consuming morphine, if I'm consuming cocaine, just because I want to or just because of the effects that they cause in my body and I'm dependent on those effects, this unwanted use is called abuse. And all types of abuses cause addictions. Addictions means your body basically starts getting used to that substance are consuming. So drug and alcohol abuse, what we study under this are various categories of drugs like opioids or opiate narcotics obtained from opium poppy, the Papaver somniferum plant, cannabinoids, the products from cannabis sativa or the hemp plant, nicotine obtained from nicotiana tobacco plant, alkaloids, LSD, that is lysergic acid diethylamide, that is a hallucinogen. All types of drugs and alcohol, as I told you, will be causing certain effects on your body. Dependence and addiction is one of those effects. Cirrhosis is liver damage by excessive alcohol consumption. So these are some bad effects of the drugs and alcohol on your body. Steroids are also something that generally are abused by sports persons. Diuretics also are abused by sports persons. Sports persons abuse steroid because steroids actually help in muscle building, so they enhance the performance in endurance sports. That is why the sports persons abuse them. Diuretics, they help in enhancing the urine loss. Loss of water from the body reduces the body weight, which is why an athlete who normally belongs to a higher weight category, they can lose weight temporarily and qualify for a lower weight category. Now, since they have bigger muscle mass, obviously they will be more stronger than the regular athletes in that weight category, and hence they'll get an unfair advantage when they're competing in the lower weight category. So such type of things, of course, constitute the abuse by sports persons, and that is, of course, a practice that needs to be checked and is hence banned. Every sports person is supposed to actually go for dope testing before any competition, in which they have to give blood samples, urine samples, through which any abuse of drugs by them can be detected. So an overview of the entire chapter. Another way of getting an overview of the same chapter will be through one more type of flowchart or diagram here. In this also, I mentioned similar things: human health and diseases. First thing, what exactly is health? Health is not merely absence of diseases. A very important statement. Health is not just absence of diseases. It is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being as per WHO, World Health Organization. Then another section in this chapter, diseases. Various types of diseases which are mentioned in NCERT have been shown over here. Typhoid caused by Salmonella typhi, pneumonia caused by Streptococcus pneumonia, filariasis caused by Wuchereria bancrofti, that's a roundworm or an ash helminth, amoebiasis caused by Entamoeba histolytica, that's a protozoan, common cold caused by rhinovirus, of course a viral disease, malaria caused by Plasmodium, Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium ovale, Plasmodium falciparum, various common species of Plasmodium, out of which falciparum causes malignant or the most dangerous form of malaria. Then ascariasis, which is caused by Ascaris lumbricoides, another roundworm. Other than this, the next part will be lymphoid organ. As I explained earlier, primary lymphoid organs, bone marrow and thymus, secondary lymphoid organs, spleen, lymph node and tonsils. Then in the immune system, next part, immunity, types of immunity, non-specific, specific. Non-specific is also called innate immunity because we are born with it. All the parts of the non-specific immunity. Why do we call it non-specific? Because the reactions or the cells involved in this immunity are not specific for any particular pathogen. Any pathogen that enters your body, bacteria, virus, fungus, protozoa, the types of mechanisms employed against it will remain the same. That's why it is called non-specific. For example, your skin acts as a physical barrier that prevents entries of pathogens in the body. Now, whatever pathogen enters your body doesn't matter, skin will always act like a physical barrier trying to prevent the entry of pathogens in the body. So skin doesn't distinguish, it doesn't differentiate between different types of pathogens. That's why non-specific. And we are born with the skin. When a newborn is let's say given birth to by the mother, the skin is already present in well-developed form all over the body. That is why the non-specific defense mechanism is also called innate, because they are inborn, they are present in the body right from birth. On the other hand, specific immunity has also been mentioned as acquired immunity. First of all, why is it called specific? Because in the specific immunity, whenever the pathogen enters the body, the cells, B-lymphocytes, which mature in bone marrow, T-lymphocytes that mature in thymus. Those cells are already present, already stored in the secondary lymphoid organs in mature form. But do these cells have any inbuilt capability right from birth to act against any pathogen? No. When the pathogen comes in the body, when these cells are exposed to that pathogen, that is when they start identifying the structure of the pathogen, the types of proteins present on that pathogen, and accordingly they start producing their own proteins. Like B cells start producing their antibodies against the pathogenic proteins. The T cells have to produce their own toxic proteins to kill the pathogen. But what type of antibodies will be produced, what type of toxic proteins will be produced by the T cells, all that will be decided only after these cells have seen, they have studied, they have got exposed to the proteins of the pathogen. So as long as the pathogen is not there in the body, the cells are there, but do they have the capability to act against that pathogen? No. So since the cells will be acquiring the capability to act against the pathogen only after getting exposed to the pathogen, only after the person has acquired a disease or a pathogen in the body, then only the cells will be getting active against that particular pathogen. That is why this immunity is called acquired or specific. And of course, the types of cells involved in it are B cells and T cells. In specific immunity, two more terms that we see here are primary and secondary immune responses. Whenever a pathogen enters your body for the very first time by crossing the non-specific immunity, then the first time your WBCs, your B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, cells of the specific immunity, the first time they act against the pathogen, that is called primary immune response. The primary immune response is always slow to begin with. Why? Because the pathogen has come in the body for the first time. As we know, the cells are already present, but they don't have any capability to act against a pathogen that they've never been exposed to beforehand. So when they are exposed to the pathogen for the first time, they have to first identify the protein sequence, the glycoprotein sequence present on the pathogen's surface. And once that is done, which will be of course a time consuming process, then only the cells can start acting against the pathogen. So primary or the first immune response against a pathogen that enters the body for the first time, that would be always slow and will not be very effective. Why? Because the pathogen is obviously not going to wait for the cells to become activated or for the cells to actually start acting against it. It will come in the body and immediately start infecting the target organs, immediately start producing toxic proteins to kill the cells or tissues in the body. So it's possible that the reaction may not be very efficient. However, if the body succeeds in controlling the pathogen, if the B and T lymphocytes succeed in controlling the pathogens, then what will happen? Those B and T cells that took part in the specific immune response against the pathogen, the first specific immune response or the primary response, those cells will be saved in the body forever, I mean throughout life of that person, as memory cells. Memory cells have got a lifespan equal to the lifespan of the individual. So the memory cells that were produced in my body, or the memory cells that got saved in my body after the primary immune response against a pathogen, they will last in my body as long as I'm alive. So if the same pathogen enters the body at a later stage, what happens now? Do we need to waste any time in allowing any B and T lymphocytes to again try and identify the pathogen? Definitely not, because we already have memory of the past exposure. So those memory cells will immediately jump into action. They will start producing antibodies, they will start producing toxic proteins almost instantaneously, killing the pathogen quickly. So secondary immune response is also called anamnestic response. Anamnestic, that means based on the memory of the previous exposure, because what are the cells that are providing you the capability to control or kill the pathogen quickly when it enters your body at a later stage or the second time? It's the memory of the past exposure. So specific immune response against the same pathogen second time, third time, fourth time, any time it comes in the body later on, is called secondary or anamnestic immune response, which is always very fast and vigorous. Another part in the specific immunity is classifying it under two categories, that is active and passive immunity. As we discussed earlier, when the pathogen enters your body naturally, then you produce antibodies against it. That's naturally acquired active immunity. But there is one more way. Rather than allowing the pathogen, rather than waiting for an actual virulent or a disease causing form of pathogen to enter your body, what you can do is prepare a synthetic lab prepared inoculum or lab prepared sample of the pathogen, which is comparatively milder than the actual disease causing form of the same pathogen. This mild form of the pathogen is called a vaccine. So when I put that vaccine in my body, what am I getting? The same pathogen only. However, this time the pathogen is coming in a mild form. So will it be causing any diseases? No. So it's safe to put that vaccine in your body. However, what are you still getting? Pathogen. Who still has to produce antibodies against it? Your own body cells. So antibody production is still happening in me only. However, did the pathogen enter the body naturally? No, I took it artificially in the form of a vaccine, which is why even though I am producing antibodies, so it is still active immunity, but how did the pathogen enter the body? Artificially. So this is artificially acquired active immunity. The other type of course is taking antibodies from some other source. So for example, as a fetus, when you are inside the body of your mother, IgG antibodies come from the mother across the placenta into your body. So that is antibodies coming from some other source into you. After birth also, when we start feeding on the mother's milk, colostrum, the yellowish fluid produced in the initial few days of lactation, the actual mother's milk produced for a few months to years after lactation, they also contain antibodies. What are the antibodies present in colostrum and milk? IgA antibodies. So IgG antibodies across the placenta, IgA antibodies coming through milk. These are antibodies coming into fetus and the newborn respectively from the mother. So is the fetus and the newborn producing any antibodies of itself? No, they're getting ready-made antibodies from the mother. That is why what type of immunity is it? Passive. However, they are coming from the mother, who is a natural source of antibodies for the fetus or the newborn. That is why what type of immunity is this? Naturally acquired passive immunity. There is another type of passive immunity which you can get as adults also. If I am suffering from a disease which is life-threatening, or if a snake bites me, for example, in such cases the snake bites me and injects its toxins or the poison inside me. What does the snake poison contain? Antigens or proteins which can cause rapid tissue damage and hence death also. So what do I need now? Immediate recovery. Can I wait for my own immune system to get activated against the snake poison? Most probably not, because by the time my immune system will become activated, I might be long dead till then. So what is the idea over here? What we can do is we can actually collect the snake poison in laboratory and inject that snake poison in some other animal like a horse, for example. Now, since we are doing this experiment in laboratory, we can always inject controlled or small quantity doses of snake poison initially in the horse and keep increasing the quantity of the poison that you are injecting in the horse, reaching to a point where the horse will actually produce or accumulate so much antibodies in its blood that it would become immune to all quantities of the snake poison. At that time, you can collect the serum from the horse's body, isolate the antibodies from it. So now these are the antibodies that are effective against the snake poison. If the same snake bites me or injects the same poison inside me, I'll inject those antibodies that I got from the horse in my body. Now these antibodies, it doesn't matter to the antibodies where they are acting. What matters to the antibodies is the antigen against which they are effective. So since the antigen is the same, will the antibodies be equally effective in my body also? Definitely yes. So what did I get over here? Immediate recovery from the snake poison. How? By taking antibodies from someone else who was not related to me. So since I took ready-made antibodies now, that is again passive immunity. But from where did I take it? From the horse who is not related to me. So what is this now? Artificially acquired passive immunity. So students, you have learned that specific immunity can be classified into primary and secondary immune responses, and can also be classified into active and passive immunity on various bases. Then cancer and AIDS, the two diseases given in detail in this chapter. Cancer types: malignant and benign tumors, localized. Malignant tumors show metastasis. Detection of the cancer is done through various techniques like biopsy, that is the examination of living tissue sample; radiography, that is using radiations to make images of internal organs of the body, for example using X-rays to make images, that is CT scan; using magnetic rays, which are by the way safer compared to the X-rays, that is called MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. And then of course the treatment of cancer. Treatment of cancer involves three strategies normally, which have been followed traditionally. They are chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and immunotherapy. Chemotherapy, use of chemicals or medicines to kill the cancer cells; radiation therapy, use of high energy radiations like gamma rays to burn or kill the tumor cells; and immunotherapy, use of interferons or alpha interferons, which are immune system boosters, or the modifiers of the immune system action. They boost the action of the immune system of the cancer patient, allowing the immune system cells to identify the cancer cells easily in comparison to the normal cells and kill the cancer cells. So the interferons are called biological modifiers because they modify or enhance the action of the immune system of the patient against the cancer cells present in their body. AIDS, the identification of AIDS, which is by the way caused by HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, is done by the test called ELISA, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, which is based on the detection of antigens or antibodies against the HIV in the body. So there are different types of ELISA, more about which you will discuss in biotechnology. Drug and alcohol abuse, various sections on it. What exactly is responsible for drug abuse? What is responsible for an adolescent, a child of your age, 15 to 24-year age group is called adolescent, which is a very vulnerable age for the child to fall into the trap of drug and alcohol abuse. So what are the causes for it? What exactly is the mechanism to avoid drug and alcohol abuse? And of course various categories of drugs that are consumed by the abusers usually. So what leads a child into the drug and alcohol abuse trap? Curiosity, need for adventure and excitement, stuff like that. Okay, when you look at your friend who is abusing some drug and you basically are put into pressure by that person to start using it, that is called peer pressure. What are the symptoms of a person who has fallen into the trap of the drug abuse? Drop in academic performance, lack of interest in personal hygiene, withdrawal or isolation from a group of friends, not attending classes regularly, going into shell, staying in your room, for example. And how to basically identify an abuser and what steps to take after that. The steps to take are, you can always first of all avoid undue peer pressure, keep away from the group of friends who you think are exactly not a good influence or company for you, and then of course education and counseling, seeking professional help if necessary. So this is an entire overview of the chapter in the form of the mind map. Going further, this is the NCERT chapter at a glance. I've highlighted all the important parts here that you need to remember from the NEET perspective, like what is health. It's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. What is our health affected by? A lot of factors like genetic diseases, infections, lifestyle, including the food and water that we take, the exercises that we do or don't do, and of course the amount of stress that we take. Diseases which are a deviation from the normal healthy state of the body, they are classified into infectious and non-infectious types, which also means communicable and non-communicable type. Common diseases in humans are caused by pathogens. Pathogen is a disease-causing organism, while parasite is an organism who lives in or on your body. For example, If we talk about ticks or mites who live on the head between the hairs, they are blood sucking arachnids. They are also parasites because they are getting their entire nutrition from your body. So they are ectoparasites. However, they are generally not going to cause any disease. So since they are parasites who live on your body but are not causing diseases, we cannot call them pathogens. So generally the statement is most parasites are pathogens. Most of the parasites, foreign organisms who survive on your body, they will be causing some diseases. So most of the parasites are pathogens, but if the statement is all parasites are pathogens, that would be wrong. So make sure that you remember this, that the line is, this is a very important line from find the correct statement, find the incorrect statement type of questions, statement 1 and 2, correct incorrect questions, assertion reasoning question also. So remember the word over here is most, not all. Most parasites are pathogens. Salmonella typhi causing typhoid, the basic symptoms of typhoid have been mentioned over here. Then if we talk about detection test for typhoid, that is Vidal test. Pneumonia caused by various bacteria like Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenza. Common cold caused by rhinoviruses. One major difference that you should not get confused in between pneumonia and common cold is a disorder of the nasal passage, which means the upper nasal cavity, your upper respiratory passage only, maximum up to throat. Pneumonia, on the other hand, is the infection of the lungs or the alveoli. So pneumonia infects deeper parts of respiratory tract. Common cold only affects the superficial or the upper parts. Malaria, another very important disease from the questions perspective. There have been questions from malaria, like in NEET 2023, there was a question from pneumonia. In NEET 2024, there was a question from malaria regarding hemozoin. What exactly is hemozoin? The toxic particles produced from the RBCs or released from the RBCs at the time of their rupture. It is these particles whose release is associated with fever and chills, the symptoms of malaria. So when do they get released? When the RBCs rupture after the growth of Plasmodium parasite in the RBCs, which is called erythrocytic schizogony, as shown over here. Schizogony, by the way, is multiple fission that is shown by the protozoan in 3 places in the human body, in 2 places, sorry. One is in liver, other is in RBCs. And the entire life cycle of Plasmodium parasite in the human body is completely asexual, while the life cycle of Plasmodium parasite in the mosquito host is sexual reproduction. Going further, another important part from NEET perspective, there have been 2 questions from this in NEET 2023 and 24. That is Wuchereria bancrofti, the filarial worm. If you look at symptoms of Wuchereria, this is the swollen lower limb of the affected person. That disease is called elephantiasis. The reason behind elephantiasis is expansion of the limb because of blockage of lymph nodes. So in elephantiasis, the blockage of lymph vessels of the infected person, that is the major symptom, and blockage of lymph vessels results in so much lymph accumulation that the affected limb swells up. That is why the disease is called elephantiasis. This is followed by another important category of diseases, the fungal diseases, which are also called ringworm. There are 3 genera of fungi that affect the human skin, hairs and nails. These are Epidermophyton, Trichophyton and Microsporum, and the main symptom of fungal infection in initial stages is dry white patches as shown over here in this picture, along with intense itching in the affected areas. For the mosquito-borne diseases or diseases which are spread through mosquitoes, which are malaria spread through female Anopheles mosquito, dengue and chikungunya spread through the bite of female Aedes mosquito, and elephantiasis, which is spread through the bite of the female Culex mosquito, there is a very important strategy which is of course controlling the mosquito population. So controlling the mosquito population involves a strategy, introduction of Gambusia, which is a bony fish that is larvivorous, feeds on the mosquito larva. So introduction of this fish in freshwater bodies can help in bringing down the mosquito population, helping us in controlling the vector-borne diseases which are spread through mosquitoes. In all three cases, if you have noticed, it is the female mosquitoes who act as vectors, female Anopheles, female Culex, female Aedes, respectively, for malaria, filaria and dengue and chikungunya. That is because female mosquitoes are the only ones who are parasites, who have any sort of interaction with the humans, or who act as the blood sucking parasites. The male mosquitoes are frugivorous. They are fruit eating, completely deriving their nutrition from fruits only. By the way, female mosquitoes also are frugivorous. They also eat or get their entire nutrition from fruits only. However, they require albumin protein for egg laying, which they will get from the blood of the mammals, and that is why the female mosquitoes have to suck the blood of mammals to get albumin protein. So this is an overview of diseases. Immunity, as we have discussed, consists of innate and acquired immunity. Under acquired immunity, a very important part, the antibody structure. There has been a question from this in NEET 2025. The question was regarding the antigen binding site of the antibody, which by the way is also called paratop. So on which end of the protein part of the antibody is the antigen binding site located? The answer to that, as we can get from this picture, is N-terminal. Now this description is nowhere in the theory. The only place where it is mentioned is in the diagram, so it's important to have a look at all the diagrams also keenly and observe details like numbers of disulfide bonds, which are interchain and intrachain. In this molecule, for example, total number of interchain disulfide bonds that we can see are 4, one disulfide bond each holding a light chain against the heavy chain of its side, and 2 disulfide bonds holding both the heavy chains with each other. Along with that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 intrachain disulfide bonds also. So 12 intrachain and 4 interchain disulfide bonds holding the entire antibody structure together. The 4 protein chains include 2 light chains and 2 heavy chains in the middle, which is why antibody molecules are also generally mentioned as H2L2, 2 heavy chains, 2 light chains. And since these are protein molecules, all proteins, as we already know from biomolecules chapter, will be having one N-terminal and one C-terminal. So it is the N-terminal of the antibody molecule that acts as the antigen binding site. And since antibody is a Y-shaped structure with 2 open arms, each arm has got one antigen binding site. That is why antibody molecules can be said to be bivalent, having capability to interact with 2 pathogens or 2 sites of the same pathogen at one time. Now going further to disorders of the immune system. Disorders also, as we see, have been important parts of NEET exam 2024-25. So in disorders, the first one is allergy. Allergy is hypersensitivity of the body's immune system against some agents which can be called allergens. Now allergens are strictly not pathogens because they are not going to cause any diseases. For example, mites in the dust, pollens, animal dander, that is the animal hairs and skin shedding from the animals like dogs or cattle, for example. So these are not pathogens strictly, they don't cause any diseases, but certain persons, their immune system can be oversensitive to these substances. Oversensitivity here refers to triggering the release of histamine from the mast cells of the person when they are exposed to any agents like these. Histamine is a vasodilator, it makes your blood vessels wider. It's also a bronchoconstrictor, it makes your bronchi constricted. So the blood pressure falls and the process becomes difficult, the most common symptoms of allergy. Next disorder in the immune system, autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is your immune system turning against the self body because B and T lymphocytes, which are ideally supposed to distinguish between self versus non-self and only initiate reactions against the non-self or foreign cells, they lose the ability to distinguish between your own body cells and the pathogens. So what happens in this case is they start turning against your own body and start destroying the body's own cells as well. that is autoimmunity. A very common example of autoimmunity is rheumatoid arthritis. There was a question on autoimmunity in NEET 2024 in which one example was rheumatoid arthritis, and there were 3 more examples which, by the way, were out of NCERT. So we will have a look at them when we come to the next slide, which shows the past year questions from this chapter. So be ready for a few surprises like this. There may be a few terms out of NCERT also. However, we need not worry much about that, because whatever options will be out of NCERT, more often than not, we generally are able to identify those on the basis of elimination of options. Lymphoid organs, I have already explained in detail, primary and secondary lymphoid organs. For AIDS, the type of virus, HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, that's a retrovirus, by the way. Retrovirus means a virus having RNA genome, which also contains reverse transcriptase enzyme. So whenever the virus comes across the target human cell, which by the way are 2 types of cells, macrophages and CD4 T cells, these are the 2 target cells of HIV. The viral genome enters inside the target cell, and there is formation of viral DNA with the help of reverse transcription process mediated by reverse transcriptase enzyme. Then the viral genome gets integrated into the chromosome of the host cell. This results in the virus taking over the cellular machinery of the host, and now what is produced are more new viral RNA and proteins. New viruses are assembled which come out of the infected cell. So macrophages act as HIV factories. New viruses are continuously formed in them, while CD4 T cells are destroyed by the virus to come out of them. So what happens in this case is the CD4 T cell count starts reducing in the patient. Now this brings us to a very important concept, the difference between being HIV positive and having AIDS. Most of the students get confused and they think that being HIV positive and having AIDS are the same thing. Well, they are not. As soon as the virus, that is HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, enters the body of the patient is called HIV positive. That, however, does not mean that the patient has AIDS, because the number of T lymphocytes or the CD4 T cells is still significantly high. Now slowly, as the virus is destroying the CD4 T cells, the CD4 T cell count starts reducing, and when it starts dropping below 200 CD4 T cells per cubic millimeter of blood, that is the time when the immune system fails to cope up with pathogens present around us. There might be a lot of pathogens around us which are non-virulent or which have got virulence. That means their disease causing capability is not very high. And in a normal person with a regular normal immunity, it is impossible for those pathogens to establish themselves in the body and cause diseases. But in a person who is infected with HIV, since the CD4 T cell count or the helper T cell count has reduced to below 200 per cubic millimeter, what happens now is a lot of infections may occur at the same time. This means a group of diseases occurring simultaneously. The symptoms of this entire group of diseases is called syndrome. So when a group of diseases, also called opportunistic infections, why? Because when are they occurring? When there is opportunity, the weak immunity of the patient. So the group of symptoms of all the opportunistic infections, that is called a syndrome, and now the patient is said to be having AIDS. So remember students that being HIV positive and having AIDS is not the same thing. It is very clearly different, and the time period or the difference between becoming HIV positive and actually developing AIDS is variable. It can be a few months in certain patients to many years, usually 5 to 10 years also. ELISA, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, as we discussed already, is the detection test for AIDS. Cancer is another dreaded disease which is non-infectious, by the way, because it does not spread from one person to another. Cancers are of 2 types, benign and malignant. An important property of cancer cells, loss of contact inhibition. Contact inhibition, by virtue of which animal cells stop dividing as they come in close contact with each other, that property is lost by the cancer cells. That is why they keep dividing and keep producing new cell mass. that is neoplasm. The cancer cells are also called neoplastic cells. If we read this line here, this was the exact line which was there in NEET 2025 exam. The neoplastic or tumor cells, they grow rapidly, invade and damage the surrounding tissues. There were two questions in NEET 2025 from cancer. One was from neoplastic cells, other was from the strategies to cure or control cancer, chemotherapeutic drugs, that is chemotherapy to kill the cancer cells, and the biological response modifiers, alpha interferons, which is a part of immunotherapy, boosting up the immune system of the patient against cancer cells. Next portion in this chapter, drug and alcohol abuse. Drug and alcohol abuse, there are different categories of commonly abused drugs. For example, opioids, drugs obtained from opium poppy plant. There can be questions from the drug and alcohol abuse section from the diagrams also. So this here is the picture of morphine, which is obtained from the poppy plants. So this is the poppy plant here. Next, the structure of cannabinoid molecule. Cannabinoids are obtained from cannabis sativa. Various parts of cannabis sativa plant, leaves, flowers, they are used as cannabinoids. For example, marijuana, hashish, charas, ganja, these are 4 examples of cannabinoids, all obtained from cannabis sativa plant. This is a representative picture of cannabis sativa plant. There are more these cannabinoids are mostly hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are the categories of drugs that alter your thought and reality perception, make you see or believe stuff or objects that do not exist in reality. So cannabinoids are hallucinogens. They are also known for their effects on the cardiovascular system of the person. There are more hallucinogens also, like the ones obtained from seeds of datura plant, also from atropa plant. Another category of drugs, alkaloids, cocaine, that is obtained from Erythroxylum coca plant, that is native to South America. Cocaine is important because it is a very potent stimulant, and the mechanism of stimulating action is interfering with the transport of neurotransmitter dopamine. So this was also an important part, because there have been 2 questions from drugs. The questions from them mostly will be matching type, because that allows the examiner to basically test more knowledge in the same question. Categories of drugs, the modes of their intake or the effects that they have on the body, or the sources. So there have been matching type of questions and direct questions also, like of cocaine. Smoking, the main effect of smoking on the body. When you are smoking nicotine or tobacco, we can say, smoking raises the carbon monoxide content in the body, reduces the heme bound oxygen, plus smoking also enhances the chances of getting cancers, gastric ulcers, coronary heart disease, bronchitis, emphysema, cancers not just of lungs, because that is of course the primary site of cancer due to smoking, but there have been urinary bladder and throat cancers also, which have been reported in smokers. Then the next section, this is mostly theoretical, but then there can be always statement based questions from it, like drug and alcohol abuse. What are the symptoms through which you can identify a child or an adolescent or a peer of yours who has fallen into the trap of drug and alcohol abuse, and what exactly are the differences? Yes, another very important part, the difference between addiction and dependence. Any person or any let's say abuser who starts taking a drug or alcohol, in the initial stages there will be only a psychological attachment to the effects of the drug. This psychological attachment is called addiction. The psychological attachment can be to the effects like euphoria, the temporary state of feeling energetic or well-being after consuming the drug or alcohol. So once you enjoy those effects, you would want to do that again. So that craving for the substance is called addiction. Remember, in addiction, there is no actual dependence of the body on the substance that you are consuming. However, as you keep doing the abuse, you finally reach to a stage where you go into dependence. Dependence is the actual dependence of metabolism, actual dependence of certain reactions in your body, certain processes in your body on the drug that you are abusing. So addiction is initial psychological attachment to the effects of the drug. Dependence is the actual tendency of the body to to depend on the molecule available for certain important processes. And when the person has reached to the stage of dependence, if the drug is not available, there will be withdrawal symptoms. There will be no withdrawal symptoms in the initial stages because there is only a craving or a desire, no actual effect on the body or no actual dependence of the body on the drug. But at this stage, there will be severe withdrawal symptoms which can be life threatening also if the drug is not available. Another important category of information from the questions perspective is this over here: anabolic steroid effects on females and males. The major reason why athletes, as I've told you, use anabolic steroids is to build muscles, but then there are side effects of anabolic steroids in both females and males which you need to remember, because there can be questions from these effects, like table with the symptoms mentioned over there. Identify how many symptoms will occur in female or male who abuses steroids. So an important section here. So this was all about the overview of the NCERT. Now let's quickly go through this portion here. When we have studied the entire chapter in the theory as well as in the form of the mind map or the flow chart, we could see that there are some high focus areas or high yield areas like types of immunity, antibody structure, the various parts of antibody structure, cell mediated versus humoral mediated immunity, the differences between them, what type of cells are involved in what type of immunity. Then vaccination, what exactly is vaccination, taking in mild or non-virulent forms of pathogen in the body. Why do we vaccinate? Because we want to prepare our body against the pathogen before it actually enters in the body. AIDS and HIV, like the important points: human immunodeficiency virus, what are its targets, helper T cells or CD4 T cells and macrophages. What are the methods of transmission of AIDS? Unprotected sexual contact with the infected individual, infected blood transfusion, sharing of injection needles from the mother to the child across the placenta. And AIDS, by the way, affects the immune system since it is damaging the CD4 T cells. That is why the full form is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Then cancer, the important conceptual questions from cancer: what is the definition of cancer? Uncontrolled division of cell. Types of cancer: benign and malignant. The important term in cancer, one more important term in cancer is oncogene. All cells in our body have got inactive genes called oncogenes, which when activated will be resulting in uncontrolled mitosis, that is called cancer. Types of tumor: allergies, the molecule that is responsible for allergic responses, histamine. Then autoimmune diseases, what exactly is autoimmunity, the examples of autoimmune diseases. Drug and alcohol abuse, the various categories of drugs and the various effects of drugs on the body. Example of each category, that's by the way a very important thing, remembering the correct example against each category. So I have made a table over here of various categories of drugs, various examples in each category, the sources of each type of drug, and another very important thing, the common mode of intake. Because in NCERT they have mentioned that morphine can be taken by inhalation or injection, cocaine can be taken by snorting or injection. So there can be questions from that part also, the mode of intake of the drug, and then of course the effects of the drug in the body. So I have summarized all of them in this one table over here. That would be very much helpful to you in quick revision of the categories of drugs. Now here are the PYQs that have come, the past year questions that have come in NEET exams from this chapter. Like if we look at 2025 PYQs, 5 of them were there. Neoplastic characteristic of cells, I just explained to you. Neoplastic characters will be mass of proliferating cell, rapidly growing and invading the other tissues. What are correct statements? So this was basically from cancer. A and C only. Computerized tomography and MRI are used for detection, and chemotherapeutic drugs are, alpha interferons are the biological response modifiers. Then we have the next question from the lymphoid organ. After maturation in primary lymphoid organs, WBCs go in secondary lymphoid organs. What are secondary lymphoid organs? C, D and E only. Next question, which of the following types of immunity is present at the time of birth? Innate immunity, also called non-specific. And this was another question in NEET 2025. Identify the statement that is not correct. I told you that antibody structure Where is the antigen binding site? On the N terminal. So on the C terminal is of course a wrong statement. Next, NEET 2024 PYQ, again 5 questions were there. First one, all are examples of autoimmune diseases except, which of the following are autoimmune diseases? Sorry, so A, B and E. Myasthenia gravis, the blockage of acetylcholine receptors of muscles by antibodies. Rheumatoid arthritis, destruction of synovial joints by the immune system. And systemic lupus erythematosus, that is nowhere there in NCERT. This is also an autoimmune disorder. Match the following, very simple question, matching the disease with the causative organism. Then another match the following. As we can see, there are total 3 match the following questions, 1, 2 and 3 in the same year from the chapter. So here the different categories of drugs versus their sources or functions. Morphine, very effective painkiller, hence used as a sedative during surgeries. Then next here another matching question, name of the disease versus the causative organism or the category of the causative organism. And here's a statement based question, statement 1 and 2. Both statements are correct because bone marrow and thymus are primary lymphoid organs, and both of them provide microenvironment for development and maturation of T lymphocytes. So remember this also, that even though T lymphocytes mature in thymus, but the protein signals for maturation of T cells are coming from bone marrow also, along with from the thymus. NEET 2023, 3 questions were there. One is matching type, disease versus causative organism. Then in which blood corpuscle HIV undergoes replication? We just discussed Th cells, the CD4 T cells, and when CD4 T cell count reduces, that is when immune system fails to work, and that is when the patient gets AIDS. And again, a match the following question, the drugs versus their effects on the body. Now let's have a quick overview of the top 5 mistakes that students generally make and that you have to avoid. Number 1, confusing innate and acquired immunity. There is a very clear distinguishing between them right from birth, acquired after the pathogen enters your body. Next, confusing humoral and cell mediated immunity, B cell mediated, T cell mediated. Next, thinking HIV directly kills all the immune system cells. No, the only types of cells killed by HIV are CD4 T cells or helper T cells, which makes your immune system weaker, leading to AIDS. Confusing benign and malignant tumors, localized, benign, metastatic. The term is metastasis. There can be other confusing terms like metagenesis, which by the way is the term for alternation of polyp and medusa of the coelentrates. Here the term is metastasis, migration in case of malignant tumors. Confusing the categories of drugs, I have very clearly mentioned in the table the category with the example. The common conceptual traps again, which are also mistakes that students generally commit, like HIV versus AIDS, they are not the same as I've explained earlier. HIV is the causative virus. AIDS is the disease caused by it. HIV positive is the status of the person when the virus enters the body. When the immune system fails, that is when a group of diseases occurs, and that's when the HIV positive patient becomes AIDS patient. Addiction versus dependence, again very important distinguishing factor here. Addiction, the initial psychological craving, dependence, actual dependence of the body, the physical need of the drug for carrying out certain actions in the body. Vaccine versus immunization. Vaccines also help in immunization, but that is active immunization. When you take ready-made antibodies, that can be called passive immunization. Pathogen versus parasite. Pathogens, disease causing organisms. Parasites, organisms who live on the body. Same NCERT line I have pasted over here also for your reference. Most parasites are pathogens. Then next, key definitions from this chapter. We have discussed all of them. You can just go through them while revising this chapter. Out of NCERT question in 2024, this option, systemic lupus erythematosus, as I told you, there can be questions like this, but if you look at it, A, B, along with that D is given, dystrophy, that's a genetic disease, lack of dystrophin protein, so that cannot be the answer. So by eliminating the option, you could always reach to the answer. Okay, here is the description of systemic lupus erythematosus, chronic autoimmune disease. attacking the healthy tissues of the body. Then these are NCERT exemplar questions. I have highlighted all the answers over here. Health, the state of complete physical, mental and social well-being. Organism causing diseases are pathogens. Clinical test for diagnosis of typhoid is Vidal test. Diseases are categorized into infectious and non-infectious. What are infectious here? Influenza and smallpox, because cancer and allergies are non-infectious. Sporozoites, which are injected by the mosquito in the human. Where are they produced? In the gut of the mosquito. Where are they stored? In the salivary gland of the mosquito. So what comes from the mosquito into human? Sporozoites. What goes from human into mosquito? RBCs containing gametocytes. Chikungunya is spread by Aedes mosquito, female by the way. Many diseases can be diagnosed by observing symptoms. What are the symptoms of pneumonia? First only, because pneumonia affects the lungs. Cancer causing genes are called oncogenes. Their activation leads to cancers. In malignant tumors, cell proliferate. Yeah, here I was telling you about the terms. Metastasis is the migration of cancer cells, not metagenesis. Then when an apparently healthy person is diagnosed as unhealthy by a psychiatrist, the reason can be showing behavioral and social maladjustment, like a drug and alcohol abuser, for example. What are reasons for rheumatoid arthritis? It's an autoimmune disease with the immune system of the body failing to differentiate between self and non-self. AIDS is caused by HIV. It does not spread through shaking hands or any casual physical contact. There has to be body fluid exchange for AIDS to get transmitted. SMAC, the other term for heroin, obtained from Papaver somniferum. Substance produced by cells in viral infection, interferons. Transplantation of tissues. Yes, another important point here. Whenever you take a graft or a transplant from someone who is not related to you, your immune system is going to identify the grafted tissue as foreign and is going to destroy it. What are the cells that destroy the graft? It's the CD8 T cells or the cytotoxic T cells of CMI, cell-mediated immunity. Antibodies in colostrum, IgA. Antibodies coming across placenta, IgG. Tobacco contains chemicals, nicotine. Antivenom against snake poison. Antivenom is a part of the immunity, which is basically passive. So what does it contain? Ready-made antibodies. What is not a lymphoid tissue? Pancreas, that's an endocrine gland, has nothing to do with production or maturation of lymphocyte. So not a lymphoid tissue. Which of the following gland is large size at birth and reduces thymus? We discussed that in chemical coordination chapter also. Hemozoin, the toxin released from plasmodium. And what is not a causal organism for ringworm? Ringworms are fungal diseases caused by the genera of fungi mentioned over here, not macrosporum. And the last one, the person with sickle cell anemia. This is a part of evolution chapter also. Sickle cell anemia makes the shapes of RBCs distorted or sickle shaped, leading to exocytosis of potassium from them, and such RBCs will be malaria or plasmodium resistant. So, well, that is all the overview of the entire chapter. So, I hope you have understood this. When you will go through the chapter again, you will be able to understand much more details about it. Well, all the best. Keep revising. Thank you so much.